There are two main types of philosophy. In one, there's nothing but matter, operating according to the laws of physics. That means, in that philosophy, as death approaches, there's no one to call out to. Or during your life, if you get a heart attack, you get in a car accident, there's no one to appeal to. There's no God, there's no higher power, there's just matter. So probably no one here subscribes to that philosophy. That I would call the main imbecilic philosophy of the time. Does anyone believe in that philosophy? For those who do, I've spent 45 years disproving it using science itself. We can ignore science because it's very complex. It's based on a very materialistic system. But I took it as a great adventure because my whole life I've been an adventurer. I took it as a great adventure to try to prove within the materialistic system, just analyzing matter, how it operates according to the laws of physics. I said, let's see if using that we can prove the existence of God. And I found that you can actually do that. What we do is we analyze mutation and natural selection. We look at what the materialists say is the process of creation. See, the materialists are in a tough situation. The materialists, having abandoned God and design, which is a straightforward explanation for any complex biological system, the simple thing, like when you see a harmonium, if someone asks, is that the product of accident or design? Well, you look, obviously it's deliberately designed because the natural forces that are available, like wind and rain and gravity and earthquakes and light, are never going to transform wood and metal into a harmonium. It's not going to happen. So similarly, we look at the ultra complexity of the human body. It is on the level of complexity billions of times greater than any computer. Computer is the most complex material structure that has been invented. So they've taken upon themselves, the materialists, a very hard job, a very big challenge. They need to prove, without God, there's no design of God, that matter itself has the inherent capacity to gradually organize itself over billions of years into first a single-cell organism. According to their view, 4 billion years ago, there was simply a primordial soup. And in that soup were amino acids and nucleic acids. Anyone know what those are? Okay, good. The basic building blocks of life. Like DNA is a long chain of nucleotides. And every 1,000 nucleotides or so is a gene. It's a group of nucleotides which together code for the amino acid sequences in proteins. Anyway, I won't torture you too much. But they've undertaken a supreme challenge to prove how, without God, all of these simple material elements organize themselves. And they have never proven it. They have millions of theories, and they've been at it for 100 years. You go on and on and on. The bookshelves in university libraries are groaning under the weight of all the books describing the theories of self-organization of matter in a primordial soup. They have never succeeded in proving that. But worse than that, we can positively prove that they're wrong. Instead of simply saying they have not yet proven the materialistic worldview, and that means it's still open, it could work. A materialistic worldview could work. But I have a more aggressive spirit. I want to actually prove that it's impossible, using all those molecules and all the stuff they believe in. It's like killing someone with their own weapon. So here's how it works. Mutations can be neutral. That means they're not beneficial and they're not deleterious. Or mutations can be beneficial. They produce, a mutation means one of the nucleotides in that DNA sequence changes. There are many events that can do that, like an X-ray that comes through. But actually, if an X-ray comes through and changes the nucleotide sequence, what happens is the proofreading system of the DNA is so efficient it corrects that mistake. And it's highly super efficient, but it makes one mistake out of a billion. So all of the changes starting from a single-cell organism in the primordial soup, up to crabs, scorpions, tigers, elephants, dinosaurs, the whole 9 yards. That's all the result, they say, of random mutations that accumulated in the DNA. If those mutations have to be deleterious, meaning bad for the organism, that organism dies. If the mutations are beneficial, that helps them. Like, imagine a race of zebras in Africa, and their main predators are tigers and lions and cheetahs. The cheetah is incredible. It sneaks up through the grass, and when it gets close enough, because it can charge it, it can run 90 miles an hour for a short sprint. And the zebras can do 40 miles an hour over a long period. So if they get enough time, if they get rolling, they can escape from their predators, the cheetahs. But let's imagine a race of zebras that can only run 30 miles an hour. And one day there was a mutation in one of them that allowed it to run at 40 miles an hour. That means because the tigers and cheetahs and the big cats are very clever, they sneak up through the tall grass and sprint. They catch the slower zebras. The slower zebras become lunge, and the faster zebras escape to reproduce. So obviously a zebra that can run faster is going to produce more offspring per generation, and that's called mutation and natural selection as a mechanism for the production of everything we see on Earth, according to the materialists. Now all of that is true. It's been verified again and again and again. The fossil record, molecular biology, everything I just said is true in the materialistic paradigm. But there's one small problem, is that most mutations are not beneficial, and they admit that. This is all, everything I'm telling you tonight is standard science you can read in the textbooks at a university or online nowadays. The big problem is the vast majority of mutations are not beneficial. They are neutral or deleterious. Now, it turns out that a combination of neutral mutations, if you get enough neutral mutations together, they can produce something very valuable. But it takes a long time because one neutral mutation does not spread rapidly throughout it spreads through a process called genetic drift, stochastic genetic drift, which is a very slow process. It takes 1 billion generations for a purely neutral mutation to spread throughout an entire population. And most of the neutral mutations don't survive because they don't produce anything of value. So it's a very rare event if a neutral mutation reaches fixation in a population. So what I do, understanding this basic molecular biology, I said, let's look for mutations let's look for adaptations, like a faster running zebra, that requires a set of neutral mutations. And I have found that, and I have calculated how long it takes. It takes 190 billion years. What does that say to you? Or you guys back, the molecular biologists in the background. What does it say? If a process of random mutation, natural selection requires 190 billion years, what does it say about that process?
Irreversible process.
Can't hear you.
Like kind of reversible process.
More than that, the significant feature of 190 billion years is the Earth is only 4.5 billion years old. If you're a materialist, you have a severe time constraint, namely the age of the Earth. In fact, you have a time constraint that's even more severe, the fossil record. The fossil record shows how long it takes for dinosaurs to transform into birds, for mammals to appear, from mammals, apes, and from apes, human beings. You don't have unlimited time. You don't even have the full age of the Earth. You've got very little time. And the one I study in particular, it's all on my website, by the way. There's an article I wrote saying that impersonal evolution, this materialistic process, is too slow to produce life within the constraints of the fossil record. You can look it up on my, it's if you want to find it afterwards, come up here and just snap this QR code, or you can tell you our website. What is it? VedicChronology.org. There's 2 C's in a row, Vedic and Chronology.org. This is my website. All the goodies are there. You don't have to worry about remembering the details.
The Vedic chronology.org.
VedicChronology.org. Sorry. So, I found, and it's actually called the opsin protein in our eye that allows us to see blue light. You may know we have 3 different types of cone cells in the eye that let us see 3 different types of frequencies. So, one of them allows you to see blue light. It's called the S-opsin. So that's the one I worked on in great detail. That, to transform the ape S-opsin into the human S-opsin would take 190 billion years. And you ain't got 190 billion years. If you're a materialist, you have the age of the earth as the max, and because now the fossil record is so well analyzed and so well dated by radiometric dating, you have only the time limits prescribed by those intervals within the fossil record. Like if you are interested in dinosaur to bird evolution, you have 100 million years and not more than that. You might say, oh, 100 million years is a damn long time. Yes, but the mutation rates are very slow. Nutrimentation spread very slowly. It's a mathematical art. It's all in the mathematics. It's called population genetics. They've spent the materialists, I took all the materialistic knowledge. This is nothing I invented. The materialists themselves have invented a science called population genetics, with equations that tell you how long it takes for certain evolution to occur. In other words, I have hung them with their own rope. They've provided enough rope for me to hang them. Now, the next step is how to let people know about it. So I have it on my website. Now, the scientists I've contacted, I say, would you please read this and let me know what you think? And they say, no, we don't have time. This is all creationist bullshit. Because the Christians, now to complicate the whole system, the Christians have been trying for decades to do this and failing miserably with bad arguments. So by now, it looks anyone who tries to prove the existence of God using science is at a disadvantage because the history of Christianity has shown that they've blown it again and again and again. So now when I present something to scientists, they say, this is creationist bullshit, Christian bullshit. That's what they tell me. So, there was a scientist in the same position 100 years ago. His name was Alfred Wegener. If you know anything about geology, he's famous. He was a geologist, Alfred Wegener. So he said continents move around the earth. They actually float around on the earth. And his colleagues said, you're an idiot, you're a moron, what's a stupid philosophy? Continents roll it. Wait, you got a continent, a big solid hunk of rock. So he calmly presented all the evidence, which I, as a child, independently discovered. You look at the west coast of Africa, east coast of South America and the west coast of Africa. You look at it, they fit together like a jigsaw puzzle. I saw that when I was a kid. He recognized that also. But when he presented it to his colleagues, they laughed at him and then said, you're an idiot, you're a fool. You should be fired, you're not even a geologist. They went on and on, because they have the high ground, they're professors, they control how people think. So what happened is, he died in the 1800s, and throughout the early 1900s, because of the powerful position of the authority, the false authority, which goes on a lot in science, I can explain that because I have a lot of experience with it. Because the false authority, the false theory of fixed continents persisted for decades. Then in the 1960s, they made a very interesting discovery. They developed what's called bathyscaphs, which are able to go down to the bottom of the ocean, like the Atlantic and Pacific. When you're getting down to several miles deep, you can't do that in an ordinary submarine. It will explode or implode. You need a special metal shell designed to handle the enormous pressure as you go down to the bottom of the Atlantic or Pacific Ocean. They went down there, and what did they find? Lo and behold, they found giant fissures. There are mountains at the bottom of the Atlantic, for example. There's a mountain running from Iceland all the way down to Antarctica. And the mountain at the top is broken. It's a fissure. And lava, red hot lava, gushes out and then freezes because of the cold. Solidifies because of the cold water. And what does it do? It pushes the continents apart, exactly as Wegener said. It pushes the continents apart at a rate of 1 centimeter per year, which is enough over the last 100 million years. 100 million years ago, we were living on a continent called Pangea. All the continents were stuck together in one giant continent called Pangea. So it began to break up. It broke up gradually, starting around 180 million years ago. By 100 million years ago, the Atlantic Ocean had begun to form. And Africa and South America were being pushed apart by the lava gushing out of the bottom of the ocean. So it's exactly, it turned out Wegener was completely correct, but during his lifetime he was, people just laughed at him like some kind of idiot. So this is probably what's going to happen with the molecular biology. It will take time because the guys in the high position, they're not about to give up. They're not about to say they're wrong. Look at these big professors. To say you're wrong, you have to be a spiritualist, a humble, someone trying to advance in actual knowledge is humble, a spiritualist, a meditator, a monk or a yogi. That's an honest person who can easily admit when they're wrong. But not these big professors. They're full of the biggest ego. Wherever, if you want to look for the biggest ego in the universe, it's at a university. They're literally an enormous ego. And also Einstein, you may know that he worked in a patent office, like a post office, and did his best work in the year 1905 on special relativity, on the photoelectric effect and other things. He was not a professor at the university, he was just a patent office worker, a post office worker. And he struggled for years to get people to recognize his stuff. Finally, he got the ear of a big physicist named Max Planck. You may have heard, he's actually very famous. Max Planck in Berlin, professor of physics in Berlin. They recognized Einstein, then he got a position, and then he declared that starlight is bent by gravity. He went on to make a bunch of really far-out discoveries. And it was 1919, and there was going to be a big eclipse in Africa, so all the big scientists went there to observe, to test his theory, the general theory of relativity. He did the special theory of relativity in 1905 and general theory. General means it handles more circumstances than the special theory. The special theory only handles frames of reference that move at constant velocity relative to each other. But for that, he got the Nobel Prize, just for the special one. So they went to Africa, they did the analysis, and they declared Einstein is correct. Even a big British physicist, it was World War I, or the end of World War I. The British and the Germans were not quite best friends. So this big British physicist, he came out in favor of Einstein. So Einstein became immediately a household word. He was famous overnight. And because he was Jewish and Hitler was gaining power in Europe, he came to America. That's actually why the Germans lost World War II. Their best scientists were Jewish, and the Jews, because of Hitler's fanatical craziness, Hitler hated the Jews, so the Jews came to America and built the A-bomb first. In fact, because Roosevelt, the president of the US at the time, was a little slow, Albert Einstein himself wrote a letter to Roosevelt saying, you better get your A-bomb program together or you're going to be speaking German very soon. So Einstein had such power, such influence over the country of America, that simply by writing a letter to the president, you try writing a letter to the president to get him to change national policy. And the project called the Manhattan Project to create the A-bomb was billions of dollars in 1945 dollars. It's trillions of dollars. It's not a small project. You know, it's a huge, major expenditure at a time when we were also already expending huge amounts of money for fighting the World War. So, sorry to get a little diverted, because I grew up right after World War II. The fact is that science, although it pretends to be purely objective and has the power, as you see on my website, to be purely objective, often it is not purely objective because you have persons with big false egos involved in the process. And they mess up the whole program. Another example of this, you may be interested in quantum physics. Anyone here? quantum physics, the double-slit experiment. What is a particle? Wave-particle duality. That's another example of giant false egos disturbing the pure process of search for the truth. And in this case, the giant false egos belong to Werner Heisenberg and Niels Bohr. You may have heard of these guys. They brainwashed a generation of physicists into believing that a subatomic particle can divide into two and go through two slits of the subatomic particle simultaneously.
That's not true.
It's not true at all. It's on my website. You'll see why it's not true. Or, to be more precise, there's no reason to believe it. Let me start with a more simple thing. You got a pair of keys, right? You wake up one morning and you look for your keys. You can't find them. But you have no doubt that the keys exist somewhere, right? Bohr and Heisenberg say no. The keys don't exist at all until you look at them. Completely crazy, non-physical. No previous physical theory like Maxwell's electromagnetism, for example, or Newton's theory of mechanics. All previous physical theories for thousands of years have had an unambiguous physical reality. An object has an unambiguous position, whether you look at it or not. Bohr and Heisenberg say no. The particle has no position until you look at it, which gives rise to completely insane and bizarre physical theories. It's all on my website, you can read it. And I document everything I say with quotes from the peer-reviewed scientific literature, quotes from other Nobel Prizes. I found 7 other Nobel Prize winners who hate Bohr and Heisenberg. They include Roger Penrose. Have you heard of him? He's absolutely famous now in physics.
What'd you say?
Roger Penrose.
Roger.
Penrose, cosmology, origin of the universe, theories. So, he directly says quantum mechanics is wrong. Roger Penrose. Recently, he got his Nobel Prize just in 2020. Then we go back a few years. There was a Dutchman named Gerald 't Hooft. I always struggle with that one. He got a Nobel Prize. He says also, it's complete nonsense. The Bohr-Heisenberg interpretation of the double-slit experiment is complete nonsense. I give a list of 7 Nobel Prizes, including Albert Einstein himself. Einstein, right from the start, as soon as they came out with this nonsense, Heisenberg and Bohr in the 1930s, Einstein immediately began arguing. And for decades he argued, until he died, that was false and wrong. And now, in recent years, we have much more support for that. He was basically alone in earlier time when everyone was jumping on the bandwagon, because Heisenberg and Bohr were extremely powerful orators. In politics, we expect this, right? Like Hitler was a fantastically powerful orator. If you understand, I speak German. Like the power, the potency, the intensity. You can see these big rallies. You can go on and see how Hitler convinced 40 million Germans to become insane and try to take on the whole rest of the world. Completely mad. And they were so good they would have won if Hitler hadn't made some mistakes like throwing out all the Jews. That we won't get into that. The point is, what we normally think to be political plays a major role in science. But the beautiful thing about science is it's always self-correcting. I got on the case of science here, as though to say it's all wrong. Actually, it's always right. But it took a century for Alfred Wegener to be recognized. It's taking a long time there are many other things I could talk about to support this. But the basic principle is, science is so good that a few big false egos are ultimately denounced later on. It just takes time. You may not have 100 years to hang around to figure out what's true and false. That's why I, as a spiritualist, do not advocate the process of science as a process of finding knowledge. Although I've spent my whole life studying science, and to quote you left and right and back and forth, I don't think it's the best way to acquire knowledge, because it takes a long time. It takes 100 years to correct the big mistakes in science. So then what do we present? We present what's called Bhakti Yoga. In Bhakti Yoga is fundamentally different from science. In science, you use your mind and intelligence, and create experiments and analyze how material energy operates. That's how science works. But in Bhakti Yoga, you receive information from more powerful beings. If we have decided that God exists, then we may ask, why would God create a bunch of antelopes and human beings and tarantulas and caterpillars and elephants? Why? Well, the most rational answer, we're trying to be rational at this point, most rational answer is he wanted to have a relationship with these beings. And specifically, he wanted to create beings who have the intelligence to reciprocate in a loving relationships. That's us. That's you and me. So if we're on board with this philosophy so far that I've been developing, then since God knows everything, why not just ask God? Isn't that more logical? If you were struggling, like you were a math student, you were struggling all day, but you had a genius friend in math, the first thing you would think of is to just ask him. So, but God is very, he doesn't reciprocate cheaply. You have to surrender your life. It's a very intense thing. But actually, surrendering your life to God is the most ecstatic thing you can possibly do. Before I became a devotee, I was a mountain climber, I was a sword fighter, I was a martial artist. I did every conceivable exciting thing you can think of. Climbed the tallest mountains. In America, it's Mount Whitney in northern Cal. When you get up to 10,000 feet, that's called the timber line. Above that, there's nothing growing. Why? Because there's less oxygen. It's a real struggle to do a run all the way up Mount Whitney. Me and my brother, he challenged me to see who would drop first. Well, we both made it. So I just give you an insight. I was an adventurer. I never wanted to have a boring life. You know, a house and a TV and a cat and a dog and just lay around watching TV all day till you die. That didn't turn me on very much. So as an adventurer, I wanted adventure. I found the greatest adventure out of everything, and I had everything. My father was rich. I had a V8 Mustang in 1966, cost $2,000. Gasoline was 15 cents a gallon. I had everything. Literally, there was no shortages. Nowadays, there's real concern about environmental impact, about gas shortages, and this shortage and that shortage. It was zero. It was a land of opulence. Of course, it couldn't last because Captain Karma does not allow you. The further you stray from Dharma, the more you're punished by Captain Karma. For example, if you eat meat, you're causing pain to another living entity. You have to suffer. Your opulence cannot go on forever, just like Hiranyakasipu, a very powerful negative living entity described in Srimad Bhagavatam, our main scripture. He did all kinds of terrible austerities and achieved tremendous power, but your power will not last forever because above you there's always a superior power, namely God. So, the logical thing to do is to ask God if you want knowledge, higher, advanced knowledge, like when did the universe start? Do we survive the death of the body? Knowledge that is really worth knowing, and it's really the goal of science. When science first started, it was to answer deep philosophical questions. So, if you want real powerful knowledge, you have to surrender to God. And if you surrender, you feel unlimited ecstasy. Far greater than any material experience possible. I experienced it. Therefore, I dropped out of grad school. I was in physics grad school, and I became a devotee. And my life became so adventuresome you can't imagine. I went to Russia right after communism fell, and there were bullet holes in the sidewalk, bullet holes in the walls, and bullet machine gun cartridges laying in the streets. Why did I go? Because they were so eager, after communism fell, they were so eager to hear from American scientists, and about spirituality. They're very spiritual, the Russian people. And all the East Bloc, which was under their control. So I went there. Overnight, I was elevated to like an international celebrity. They brought the TV cameras. TV cameras were rolling. First of all, the hall was packed with 1,000 people. You could go, in those days, think about this as a distributor. You go to a city like Warsaw, the capital of Poland, or Moscow. You just go around the city and you put up a few posters, and you get 1,000 people to come to listen to a 6-hour lecture on exactly what I'm talking about now. Science and spirituality. That's so exciting, such an exciting concept for them. So overnight, in San Diego, where I was from, where I joined, as a Hare Krishna devotee, I was a pot washer. And I would clean the floor, but that was ecstatic. I was really in ecstasy. I said, this must be something very, very transcendental. If I, who's always a big puffed up scientist, could feel ecstasy by washing the floor, the temple floor, cleaning the pots. Any little service you do for Krishna, this is the point. Krishna is so pleased, he reciprocates. And how does he reciprocate? By letting you feel overwhelming ecstasy. He changes your whole life. I never had any experience of ecstasy like this. I immediately dropped out of school. I was a grad student at University of California, San Diego. That's a damn, it's like University of Texas, Austin. It's way out there. It's one of the highest schools in America. You don't drop out. If you're a grad student, you have to work your butt off to get there. You don't just drop out. You can test my theory, go to the student university and start preaching to students. It's not going to be very easy, I'll say. The reason I did is because I attended a kirtan by devotees in the San Diego Temple who are especially expert in kirtan. After that one kirtan, I almost felt like I was leaving my body. It was so intense. I was stunned. I was not a religious person. I thought there might be a God. I wasn't sure. I was open. I was not a religious person. My parents were not religious. They were scientists. How is it possible a person can transform their whole existence? Because Krishna is unlimitedly full of ecstasy and love, and he wants to embrace you. Now you might wonder why I'm going off with he, the classical he for God. Well, there's a female aspect of God called Srimati Radharani who controls Krishna. But she doesn't have to get her hands messy with dealing with people like me. So she lets her beloved, Krishna, deal with nonsense people like me. But just to let you know, we have a female conception of God, and she is superior. Krishna surrenders to her. Krishna bows down before her. Krishna offers to do menial services like dress her hair. And Krishna loves it. God loves me. What God really likes is not sitting on a big throne and casting people into the lake of fire. He doesn't even like being in a big position and asking people to worship him. Krishna doesn't really want people to worship him. He's happy if that's what you want to do. But what he really likes to do is serve his pure devotees in the highest region of transcendence called Sri Vrindavan Dhama, where I'm going in 1 week to give up my material body, which has reached the end of its useful life. It doesn't work well anymore. So we're not attached to materials. They beg and plead the doctors. They run from one doctor office to another with 1,000,000 pills, a whole pile of pills day and night, taking this and doing this and begging the doctor, please give me one more month. That's what a materialist does, because a materialist thinks he is this body. He's committed himself to a false worldview. But a devotee considers death the ultimate adventure, because a devotee's whole life is adventure. It was never boring. At any stage, if you're a real devotee, Prabhupada said this, Krishna consciousness is a thrill at every moment. Srila Prabhupada said that. It's a thrill at every moment if you're surrendering more and more. That's the key point. What does it mean to surrender? First stage of surrender is to hear the Maha Mantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. First step of surrender is to hear, to chant and hear that. You can try now. Everything I'm saying you can experiment with. You don't have to believe me. It's not blind faith. Many people have done what I've done and experienced the power of Hare Krishna mantra. The power of surrender and the power of not surrendering. If you want to have a boring life, don't surrender. Very simple. I've done it right, I've done it wrong. I tested both sides of the coin. So, first step of surrender is to hear the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. And in the beginning, it's better to hear in a group of others. It's more powerful. Group energy builds up. So you come here and chant. You should chant several times a week. You should do that. Where's our... Are you... Okay. I'm sure they arrange it so you can come a few times a week to chant. So you should do that. Come here a few times a week. As you get more attached to the chanting, you'll do more of it. You do more and more. Actually, what Prabhupada, our spiritual master, said, someone asked him, what is the result of chanting? He said, more chanting. Because by chanting, you fall in love with Krishna. And you feel the happiness that you've been looking for billions of lifetimes. By the way, we've all been reincarnating, and I can give evidence for that a little later. We've all been reincarnating for billions of lifetimes. There's none of us in this room who have been here for only a short number of lifetimes. So, finding out about Krishna and realizing the steps of surrender. First step is chanting. Second step is to engage in some practical service for the devotees of Krishna. It can be like what I did when I first came to the Sangha temple. I just washed the floor. I just cut the veggies, like we have a feast. Someone's got to cut the veggies. Practical. I just did simple things. Simple things have tremendous power. If you're doing them with the consciousness, oh my Lord, oh Lord, I want to love you. I want to reawaken my love for you. Very simple service with a very simple conception. Everything based on your consciousness. If you do things in wrong consciousness, you get a different result. You do simple service for the devotees, and while you're doing it, you're praying to God, please accept this humble service. You're going to get boosted out like anything. I promise, I guarantee you. And then you'll find that while you're doing the simple service, more powerful than an English mantra is this Hare Krishna mantra. So you start chanting while you're doing the simple services, and then you get carried away by nectar and ecstasy. The people who do not get carried away are persons who do not want to advance in spiritual life and who do not want to have a relationship with God. If you have that mindset, that's why I said in the very beginning, there's two fundamentally different paths. The path of your only material elements and nothing more. And when you're dead, you drop dead forever. Pretty horrible, isn't it? But everyone in this room said they rejected that philosophy, so there's no point in going into that. That means you do believe in God. So next question is, do we want to have a relationship with God? Well, He has unlimited power. He can do everything to help you. Why not? You'd have to be a moron to ignore God. There's a person with unlimited power who loves you, wants to help you and give you everything, and you say, nah, not interested. Well, I guess there's some morons, but not everyone is that stupid. So, doing the service, as I said, then the third step of surrender is to read the books. This book is something I wrote. It's not what you would read as an introductory book. This book is about science, like the science I'm talking about in the lecture. I won't go more into science unless you want to hear about it, in which case I'm ready to stay 12 hours more. And I always get totally enlivened by talking about Krishna, so I'm willing to spend as much time as you are willing to spend.
Usually they stop around this time and open it up for questions.
Okay, let's do that. Wait, I have to complete the process. Then the next episode is to read these books, but the main one to read is Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. They will show you afterwards. Maharaji will show you.
We have it right here on the windowsill.
Just hold them up. They're written thousands of years ago by incarnations of God or God Himself. This Gita was spoken by God Himself on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. The Srimad Bhagavatam was written by an incarnation of God. And there are many more books we have because people who specialize in certain branches of knowledge, as I have done, write books that are supportive of the original Sanskrit literatures. So you read those, and those are the steps of surrender. And as you're surrendering, your life must change. You start to feel different. You start to feel more and more ecstasy when you chant, and you want to do some huge service for Krishna. That was my situation in the 80s, and I prayed for communism. I prayed for an opportunity in communism. No one could see it coming. If you're alive at the time, It's like as though the sun didn't rise that morning. So I prayed from big situation and I got it. Krishna reciprocated with my desire to do more service. And then the more service you do, the more your chanting becomes ecstatic. And the more your chanting becomes ecstatic, the more service you want to do. That's the process of elevation. That's the process of surrender. So I'll stop at this point. Any rotten tomatoes? Any objections? I like objections. I like to argue. My whole life is scientific argumentation. You don't have to blindly. Nothing I said should be blindly accepted. You should test everything out. I'm offering you keys to the kingdom of God. I think it's worth testing to see if you got the right keys. I'm offering you unlimited power, unlimited intelligence. What happened to me when I started? I was a pretty ordinary physics student. When I started serving Krishna, my memory increased enormously. Now I remember phone numbers from 40 years ago. I remember everything, minute scientific details, effortlessly. Not because of my power. I know very well my limitations, as exemplified before I joined. Krishna is superhuman. He can make you superhumanly powerful intellectually. He can make you powerful physically. There are devotees who are fighters, and they're the best fighters. No one can match them. There are devotees who are musicians, and as far as I can tell, they're the best musicians. They're super. If you become a devotee and you like to do something for Krishna, whatever you like to do, Krishna will empower you to do that better. So long as you don't get carried away with false ego. Here's one problem on the path. As we become more powerful and more expert, we tend to become proud. But at that point, you have to have a deep reality check and analyze and be very crystal clear with yourself that I have only become powerful because God made me powerful. Any other questions?
Thank you for your class, Guru. That's really nice. I will always ask. I've asked many people this and I've gotten many different answers. But my question is, how do you maintain the difference between pride and confidence? How do you have confidence in what you preach, but not be proud to the point where you're wrong?
Confidence makes you enlivened to surrender more to Krishna. Confidence makes you more eager to serve Krishna. It makes you more inspired. It gives you a taste for chanting the Maha Mantra. It gives you a taste for reading Bhagavad Gita. Whereas pride, you start losing a taste for chanting. You start losing the taste. That's how you can tell that pride is different from confidence or empowerment in devotional service. Because when you do the wrong things, Krishna pulls the plug out, and then you become weak, you become tired. All day long you're tired, you don't want to get out of bed, you have no enthusiasm to read, you don't want to chant, you don't want to do any service. The very services that gave you so much happiness a few months earlier, you can't get into them now because you have the wrong consciousness while you're doing them. That's the key point. If you forget everything else I said tonight, the advancement depends on having the right consciousness, which is the consciousness of great humility, sacrifice, and surrender to the will of God. Krishna wants people to find out about him. He doesn't want people to suffer with these material bodies, get old and sick. Why does Krishna want to get old? He doesn't want you to be in the material world at all. We're in the material because we're so stubborn, we insisted on it. So therefore, Krishna's program for the material world is to have people like me and Vrindavan Prabhu go around and tell people about Krishna. Specifically through the books that Prabhupada wrote, which are empowered. So Krishna has a plan for the material, and if you surrender to that plan, you become very ecstatic, you become very empowered and expert, and everything you could possibly want. And you can test, all of this is testable. You may have been coming to lectures for a few months or so, right? But your life is not going to change until you make big surrender, big sacrifice, big steps towards Krishna. If you want to take little steps towards Krishna, he's cool with that. He doesn't care if you take 1,000,000 lifetimes. Krishna is so cool. He's not like that certain class of religionists who say, you don't believe in me, you go to hell. And not just for a short time. How crazy can you get? God does not want anything to do with you forever. You go to hell forever. What kind of nonsense is that? That immediately disqualifies that as a bona fide religion. How nonsensical. God cannot be insecure. Like he's canvassing. He's trying to get more slaves to serve him. God, Krishna already has the most empowered, the most beautiful, the most effective and creative people who are begging to serve him day and night in the transcendental world of Goloka Vrindavan. People who are so empowered you can't even imagine. They create planets just by their thought. They have the power to create a planet. But Krishna is not insecure. He's got so much that he wants to give up being God and become a devotee of God. So a religion that has an insecure God, there's got to be something wrong there. Right? Would you agree? Got to be something wrong. An insecure God. Whereas Krishna is so cool if you read Bhagavad Gita. He never says, you got to do this or you go to hell. You must do this. You have to do like this. No, he just says, if you do this, then you get that. It's pure philosophy. Krishna is so cool, he's so relaxed. In the end, he tells Arjuna, okay, I told you all this stuff, I told you all this philosophical stuff, now you can do whatever you like. He doesn't force. He doesn't say, you have to become my servant. You have to surrender. He never says it. Rather, Krishna is eager to become the servant of his devotees. If you want to, that's the most mind-blowing thing about our philosophy. Is that Krishna, what he really he plays the role of God. Because that's his job. You got to do that. Actually, he doesn't have to do it. He has many empowered persons who do that. His expansions. But that's a whole other subject. But what he really wants to do is become a devotee of his devotees. As exemplified in Srimad Bhagavatam. All of this is in Srimad Bhagavatam. Just read it. Who had a question?
Yeah, thank you for very indeed inspiring.
I can't hear you, sorry.
I'm saying that thank you, Prabhu, it's very inspiring. My question is, if you were to choose any particular moment from your journey, was there a moment that you felt especially connected to God or to Krishna, to Prabhupada, anything?
Yes, giving these lectures. And can you imagine people sitting there for a 6-hour lecture? Because it was sentence by sentence translation, so my speech was 3 hours. Then each sentence has to be translated into Russian. And after that, did they say, good, I'm glad I can get out of here and run away? No, they hung around and asked millions of questions. The program started at 5 p.m. I didn't get out till midnight. And they bought tons of books. I was literally in ecstasy. Especially having struggled in San Diego for 8 years. They bought tons of books. They came to the temple. Some of them joined, became devotees. That's when you float off the charts in ecstasy. Because you're doing what Krishna wants, and Krishna is reciprocating big time. Those are the moments when I was giving these lectures, the top ones. Other moments, book distribution in America, I did that before I went. One time I was praying like anything to Krishna. I just want to give this guy a book, please, please. I was praying like anything. And he said, he's giving all the reasons why he didn't want to buy the book. And I said, you should buy this book because you're an airline pilot. He had nothing on that related to no wings, no hats. And his eyes just lit up like anything. So he bought a bunch of books. And I will tell you, you want to hear this, the fall of communism is a one-time event. You're never going to see that again. So, but the book distribution on the street now in America, I know many book distributors have had this experience where you're praying. Another example, another book distributor told me, praying, the guy said, no, I'm not into it, don't. And he said, you should take this, the book distributor, the devotee. He said, you should take this book because your birthday is January 17th, 1995. What do you think if someone, there's no material explanation. The probability, you can calculate how low the probability of guessing. Each digit, you have 1 out of 10 possibility, and you have a phone number is what, 7, 8 digits?
7.
7 digits. So it's 10 to the 7, 1 out of 10 to the 7th power. 1 out of 10 million is the chances of guessing a phone number correctly. These are the peak moments you will get. I promise you, if you surrender to Krishna, you will get these experiences. I'm not unique at all. There are many, many thousands of book distributors and thousands of preachers and devotees throughout the world having these experiences. I'm telling you this to inspire you that you're entering onto a big adventure. I was always a big adventurer. I drove a V8 Mustang. I was a madman, by the way. Drove a V8 Mustang, challenging everyone to a drag race. I climbed tall mountains. I was a sword fighter, a martial artist. I wanted some thrill, thrill sports, exciting. Facing off with someone, sword to sword, is quite a thrilling experience. But nothing compared to Krishna, which again, in serving Krishna. It's up to you. You can have a mundane life. You can go home and have a cat and dog, watch TV all day, or forced to work somewhere to pay the rent, pay a few dollars work for a nasty materialist who hates your guts. Yeah, you can do that. Next question, why would you want to do that? Is that what life is all about? Everyone knows life is about something higher, a thrill, an experience, especially a spiritual experience, because that's going to last after you die. I'm going to die in a few days, and there's nothing I can do about it. But what I can do about it is put my consciousness, which is spiritual, in the right position to leave my body in pure consciousness. Then I'll not have to take another material body again. We're in the material body now is a mistake, serious mistake we made. Biggest mistake we ever made, getting into the material body. That's a subject of another lecture. But the point is we can rectify it. You will be forced to get old. You will be forced to get sick. And you will be forced to die. And if you don't recognize that, the material energy is going to show you in the most graphic ways. 8 months ago, I lost the power to walk. I've been in a wheelchair. A person who was an athlete, a long-distance runner and a fighter, I can't even walk now. I never recovered the power to walk, and my kidneys failed. So I'm forced into many horrible situations with failed kidneys. So maybe your kidneys won't fail, but your liver's going to fail, or your heart, or something's going to fail. You're guaranteed it's going to fail. That doesn't mean we should be motivated by fear. That's a lower form of motivation. Most of my class was to motivate you to a higher goal by happiness, a superior goal, instead of fear of an inferior result. But the inferior is real and it is there. I can go on and on. I'd love to have your science lessons, especially if anyone's interested in molecular biology or quantum mechanics. I go on endlessly. We talk forever.
We have the next part of the program is Kirtan usually.
Okay, let's do it.
If that's okay. If whoever wants to speak afterwards and ask any questions after the Kirtan, you're more than welcome to. But we can give a round of applause. Thank you.